In this lesson, we'll talk about the Boolean data type. The Boolean data type is actually named after the English mathematician George Boole. So if you haven't heard the term before, that's totally fine. It's typically used by developers and scientists and the like. It's not really as common a term as something like integer. A Boolean is a special data type that can only be one of two values. It's either true or it's false. That's it. There's no other possibilities, just true or false. Booleans are a really great choice whenever you need to model a relationship that is either or, either this or that. For example, something can be either true or false, or it can be either on or off, or it can be either present or not present. Whenever you have that kind of relationship, there's only two possible values, and they're the polar opposite of each other. A Boolean is the perfect data type to represent that kind of relationship. There are many properties available across objects in the Excel object model that return Booleans. For example, if we reference the active workbook, which just returns a valid workbook object. As a reminder, active workbook is a property on the application object, which returns the workbook that is currently selected or active. So if you only have one workbook open, by default, it's just going to return that one. But it's a workbook object at the end of the day. Every workbook object has a property called saved. Saved is just a reflection of whether the workbook is saved or not. So we're starting to see that relationship of either or. So when we execute this, we're going to get a return value of false. And this is not a string of false, this is a Boolean data type. And it's telling us that this active workbook is not saved, right? So it's an either on or an off switch. As another example, on every workbook, we also have a property called hasPassword. HasPassword, again, is an either-or relationship. A workbook either has a password or it does not. There's no other options besides that. It's not like a number where we have an infinite number of numbers or a string where we have an infinite number of characters that we can combine together. This is just either true or false, on or off. So does this workbook have a password? The answer is false. That means it does not. So this is an example of a Boolean data type, just true or false. And just like these Boolean data types are assigned to certain properties, we can also declare variables in our procedures that hold this kind of data type. Let's take a look at that within this brand new module in our workbook. I'll begin by declaring a procedure. Let's call it my first Booleans. Let's put some parentheses at the end, line break, and the way to define a variable with a Boolean data type is the same as always. We begin with a dim keyword followed by the variable name. I'm just going to call it my bool. The as keyword to define the data type, and then we just write Boolean. So capital B, there's two O's in there, L-E-A-N, all right? And below, I can define a value for the my bool variable, my bool, and it can be either true or it can be false. You can even see the drop-down options appear. Notice that true or false is not going to be written in double quotes because double quotes means a string. True or false is a built-in data type, so VBA is automatically able to recognize this as a Boolean. Do not put double quotes in there. Also notice that the first letter of the Boolean, either the F in false or the T in true, is going to be capitalized. So we're setting this my bool variable to false. Let's just do another example below. Let's do something like a variable called VBA master as Boolean. Same syntax. Below the declaration of the variable, we can actually give it a value. VBA master equals true. Usually whenever we're going to be writing real procedures, something that actually has a purpose in real life, Booleans are going to be used to track the status of some kind of operation. So Booleans are kind of going to be given an initial value, and then we might perform some kind of procedure and switch the Boolean to another status if we observe something along the procedural steps that we're taking. But in this lesson, all I really wanted to cover is the declaration syntax for Booleans and give you a big picture overview of what it is. It's just a data type that represents a relationship that is either or, true or false, on or off, yes or no, that kind of deal. Many different properties on different objects have this Boolean data type, and we can also declare it just like any other data type within our code. We're going to see some examples later on in the course of how we can actually use it whenever we're doing some kind of procedures or operations with our actual worksheet content.